here we go. All right, Talking Preps fans, we are here for a brand new segment this year that I think is just going to be absolutely dynamite. I think it's going to really take the show to the new level. We mentioned last week that we're going to make it into a podcast as well, and this is what we're kind of doing, transcending Talking Preps and beyond. We're going to call this Talking Preps Overtime. I'm going to bring my man Grice on here and kind of go over it because this is going to be really cool. Coach Grice, Talking Preps OT, We all love OT in sports because it means bonus time. You get more for your money. This is going to be more than just talking preps. This is going to be us taking it to the extreme.
Oh, I agree 100%. And I think, one of the biggest things is everybody sees, a lot of these coaches on Friday night. One of the benefits, Guru, that you know about, that I know about, is there's some really awesome guys that are out here. And, I think our lineup is going to be great because we get some awesome coaches that have great experiences of leading young men and have done so at a high level for so long. Even myself as a young coach, I've wanted to chop it up with these guys. This gives us a great opportunity to kind of show who these guys are and give them a chance on their platform to tell you about some of the amazing things they've done. So I'm excited.
All right, guys, we got Coach Brian Hales on here. And Coach, great having you on here, by the way. I called you the mayor. Great to have you got to have the mayor when we're starting something as cool as Talking Preps Overtime. But I just want to ask you, I know that you played at Kent State and kind of get your background, but I wanted to find out how in the world you ended up from Ohio all the way down here to Queen City. It's got to be a cool story. So why don't you elaborate that on us?
Oh, absolutely. I had a roommate and a former teammate of mine at Kent State, Ken Walter, who, had a long journey to get here, but he ended up down here punting for the Carolina Panthers. So it was, I want to say I just finished playing, so it was the fall of '96, I believe. And, Ken was down here, and he invited us down for a game with the Chiefs. They're playing Kansas City. So, I think we left Ohio, myself and another former teammate and his girlfriend, and we left Ohio, and it was probably 30 degrees and snowing around Kent. And we got down here to Charlotte on Friday night, and we got off the Harris Boulevard Reams Road exit, which is now where I think North Lake Mall is, but it wasn't at the time. And we got down here, we get up Saturday morning, it's 80, 85 degrees. We got people out at the swimming pool where we were staying at, and just fell in love with the place and, realized it's crazy to live up here in the snow and the cold when you don't have to. So, when I graduated in December, packed up and moved down here with another former teammate of mine and, lived with him and, and made Charlotte my home at that point. But, yeah, I think the big thing was the weather getting down here.
No, I can understand you being down here after going up north. I'm from the South, and I can't do it up there. So kudos to you for even lasting that long. But it's crazy because you've been coaching for a while. Like, fun fact, one of my best friends, actually, Derek Thompson, played offensive line at Providence Day, and you were his coach. I mean, you talk about how long you've been doing this like that, and I'm coaching high school ball and, supposed to go against you week one. Like, what the heck? Like, but you've been doing this for a long time. My biggest question there is, what do you think, about football and CMS that's different, than when you started? And what are some of the things that I guess are constant? I'm curious about that.
As far as the differences, there's good and there's bad, of course. As far as the good differences, I think it's a much safer game than it used to be. And I know a lot of the traditionalists, if you want to call them that, kind of bemoan that fact, but it's a safer game, in terms of concussions especially. And, it was an adjustment, honestly. For myself, for a lot of guys I was coaching with back then, especially when they started taking a lot of those like blindside blocks out of the game and things like that, because that was a big part of what we were doing. That 28, 29G that, we were running then, that we're still running. We went for a couple of touchdowns this week. But that was always a big block on that. Guys like Mickey Brewer and Jared Poykin used to love coming down on linebackers on that. You can't do it like that anymore. And so that was an adjustment. But like I said, it's a positive one because it is a much safer game now. And just the changes in the equipment and things like that. But, the way the people are scoring points, is much different. In terms of the tempo the teams go at, and just everybody pretty much for the most part is going no huddle now. Some of the other differences is the tight end position. Back then everybody had a tight end or two tight ends, and now it's like you out there in the I formation, and you get some of the young coaches and they're like, gosh, what is this? Is this a trick play or something like that? So, being able to call on some of that stuff is fun. That we grew up. Chris and I at least definitely grew up playing in an era like that. But definitely changes in that regard, and just the way people line up and what everybody's running. But again, at the end of the day, you got to block people, you got to tackle people, you got to take care of the football. So, those are definitely some of the constants, and the teams that do a great job in the off season. Are the teams that are being successful and will continue to be successful.
Hey, Brian, I got a quick follow-up, and I also want to add something else kind of to that same point. You mentioned, the differences in practices. Back in the days, we'd have the Oklahoma drill almost every day, and, you wore full pads and every day, and, there was no slow days. Well, today, most teams practices in shorts anyway. I know that is a much safer alternative than maybe the old days. But, the question I want to ask also is, I know you are a 3-sports player, which I totally promote and want all the young guys out here to play, and even ladies. But how do you feel, and maybe what levels of encouragement do you give your players to either go off and play other sports versus maybe just being in the weight room or running track in the spring or something like that versus, the baseball or basketball or whatever? How do you feel on that specialization?
Man, play them all. Play them all. Play every sport that you can. Because number one, you're going to practice competition more often, really. And I think competition is a skill that you can improve on. So, if you go and you're playing your, 10 or ideally 15 or 16 football games, you go on, you play 30 basketball games, you're playing 25, 30 baseball games. It's just, you just learn how to compete a lot more. And then to that too, it gives you a break from it. And as much as I think people don't like to admit it, you need a break. I mean, I need a break from it. And I think the kids need to do that because it gets repetitive, and I think kids just get burned out. And then to that, I think you're around some different people, and I think that's important as well because a group of football players is definitely different than a group of basketball players. Is definitely different than a group of baseball players. So, I think it just helps you be a more well-rounded person too. So, no, we encourage our kids play everything. Now, you may not be a basketball player, and you may not make the basketball team. Go out and wrestle, but if that's not your thing, then yeah, be in the weight room and continue to work and do those things. But no, I absolutely, all of our coaches, we encourage our kids, play them all, man, play them all.
Yeah, that's awesome. So kind of staying on this, old coach or, old young coach, topic. I'm, in a situation where I went from a staff at Hopewell where I'm the third youngest, and, I go over to Creek and I'm actually the third, fourth oldest. So, it was one of those moments where I finally realized, like, hey, I'm not old. But I'm not the young guy anymore. And that was kind of a funny moment. And Chris, I'm sure you had that, that sort of chime in there first if you have anything. But, my question is to both of you guys. What is that moment where you realized and said, well, daggone, like, I'm not the young coach anymore. Like, I've kind of transitioned a little bit.
Right now. No, man, I still try to be, I try to act like one of the young guys out there and try to have fun in that. And really, that's why we do this, man. That's why we love to do this stuff, because it does keep us young, and it's just so much fun being out there with those guys. But no, I think my moment was we were over at the Glazer Clinic one year, and this was long after Mike had gone up to A.L. Brown, and sitting around the room with some of our coaches. I looked to my left and looked to my right, and I realized I was then the oldest guy in the room. Now, this was 10 years ago. I mean, I was still in my 30s then. But, yeah, I think that's when I started to realize it. But then, more so recently when I kind of looked around the landscape of the city and realized, I've kind of been doing it, right now a little bit longer than everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I've got pictures of even some of us, at coaches clinics, in 2007 or 8 or whatever. We all got dark hair and look so much younger and vibrant. And here we are. You go to the clinics today and you look around and realize, man, I'm kind of the old guy. And I was on a similar staff. started out, I was the youngest of about 16. And, by the time I had worked with a couple of guys on your staff there, Coach Hales, I was kind of a little bit more longer in the tooth, a little bit older, a little bit more wiser, but not really. And sometimes I look back and think, man, I still want to coach again. I really do. And I think that I may end up coaching one day. But the more and more I think about it, I want to get there and they're going to think that I'm like Moses or somebody coming in because I'm going to be gray bearded and everything like that.
Right. Hey, come join us, man. Come join us.
No, I love it. And, kind of staying again on this, it's one of those fun things I like. And even for me, I talked about my transition, my receiver coach, right now is in his mid-20s. And I have to kind of remind myself, this guy's really, a young guy, but, it kind of gives you that great perspective. Let's talk about a couple of young guys you've worked with. You've been working with, of course, for a year with current Independence head coach DJ McFadden was on your staff a little bit. Now you have, he's a young old guy. I call him in Trip Stone, where I feel like he's been coaching for 30 years his dang self. If he's not, even
and he still looks young, by the way.
Yeah, and there can be hurdles, and you hear some older coaches talk about that. Can you talk about how it has been to work with them? Because they're great coaches, and we know that while DJ's already got his head coaching job, we know Trip Stone's next up. He's that good of a coach. But I just was curious about your experiences working with them and how it shaped you as a coach.
Oh man, and in talking about those guys, I've been lucky to coach with so many great guys. Going back when I started there at Butler with Shaughnessy and Newsome and those guys, and we could get into that part later because I do want to answer your question here. But being able to work with Trip and DJ has just been it was great. It was great because being able to bring in guys that have been in other successful programs, because that was something we didn't have a lot of. We had a lot of really homegrown coaches, so to speak, at Butler, where, I think we've got 3 guys on our staff now that played for us. So, a lot of guys that kind of came up through our system. But to be able to bring guys in, that have had the success that, Trip and DJ have had at some of their stops, that, to be able to get their perspective and some of the things that they've done successful, it's been really neat. It's been really neat, and then to see their energy and the passion they put into it. We've really been blessed in, the short time that DJ and, DJ Rankin as well was with us, but, to have Trip with us it's been such a blessing to me because I haven't thought about defense for 5 seconds since Trip got over there. So it's really nice to not have to worry about that stuff. And really, going back, to my whole time at Butler, that's been a great thing about the head coaches. You really haven't had to worry about defense because, we had Steve Shaughnessy and, Chris Pierce came after Steve and Mike Nam. We had Mike Hawks and Trip and just guys that were head coaches of the defense where you just don't really have to worry about it.
Oh, and that's a blessing. I think you talk to any coach and have a guy that's really dominant and really experienced on one side of the ball, seems to make it very easy, for you guys. Like I said, we talked about the young guys. We've got to get back to, like you said, talking about working, with Shaughnessy, having him there, working under Mike Newsome. I want to start even there, like being under Mike Newsome. What was it like working with him? I know, my first experience with him, my actual first high school game at Hopewell was coaching against A.L. Brown, and they beat the absolute hell out of us from my first game. But, he was so gracious and, been a guy that's been super respectful. And, of course, as we know, well-respected, in this area. Can you talk about working with him and maybe some of the things that you learned to springboard you into such a successful head coaching career?
Mm-hmm. Mike's great. Mike and I still stay in touch pretty frequently and talk to each other and text and all that. But, Mike brought me in back in 2004 and, he had interviewed. I was doing in-school suspension. I was the ISS guy at Butler, the 2002-2003 school year. That first year I was coaching at Providence Day. Shuford was still the head coach then, but he didn't have any paid spots. So, so I coached over at PD those 2 years. And then when the opportunity moved up to come into Butler, that's what I did. So, so Mike hired me. I can't remember if it was June or July. And it was a Friday afternoon. He said, all right, we're leaving to go to NC State this weekend. We're going up there to team camp. So, I went home. I packed my bags. And when I got there, jumped in the car with Steve. And Coach Shaughnessy and I rode up to Raleigh together for that. And that was the first time I ever met Coach Shaughnessy, was that, 2.5, 3 hour drive up to Raleigh. But, just the stuff I started to learn from their guys, and especially with Mike and his organization. And I can't match it, and that's what you got to learn. What your strengths are, but you got to pick up things from other guys. And Mike's just a detail-oriented guy and an organized guy, and that's a great part of why he's successful. But we got on the bus and we were going down to Parkwood, for that first scrimmage. And as we were driving down there, he kind of, he turns over his shoulder, he looks at me, he said, "By the way, you're going to be our head JV coach." I said, "All right, great." So, we kind of went from there. But, even when we went up to NC State that week, he's like, you're going to be our offensive coordinator with these young guys. And, those young guys happen to be Jake Charest and Robert Blanton and, Mickey Brewer and Eddie Whitley and guys like that. So, again, I can just go on and on. But, the one guy, everybody thinks I've been a Butler forever, and I have. But, Mark Sanders, who works with our receivers, he's actually been a Butler since the school opened up. And he's been working with the football program, since then. He's our head girls basketball coach. He's been coaching track. And so there's actually, a coach on our staff that's been doing it longer than I have.
That's crazy. That's pretty awesome. And again, I think that's one of the cool things about, a program like you say, like at Butler, where you have guys that have just been there. And like, in this fast changing, ever evolving CMS, coaching carousel, if you will, I think that's kind of revered and we don't get that, as much. Definitely, one, I kind of talk about, you working under Newsome and, open this up. And I want your answer too, because, we're all offensive guys on here. So, Coach, what do you feel was the worst play call you ever made? Like the one Newsome probably looked at you and thought, did I make a mistake in having this Hales guy as my OC? I think for me, being young, I'll start and give you a second because I know you called so many plays, out here. I think for me, the funniest one, I was on JV, and it's that moment, before the first half ends, where you're like, do I want to go for it or do I want to, kind of just run the ball and see if we get something and take it to the half? Well, I'm coming in all hot shot. I'm about to be the next McVay, so I'm like, we're going to go down the field with a guy that's never played quarterback before, but we're about to rip off a 60-play 10 or 60-yard 10-play drive in like 2 minutes. And here we go. First play, we throw a damn pick six, and he goes back and scores. And Burrs looks at me and says, "Run the ball. Let's get the hell out of here, Grice." So that was one of those first moments where I was like, okay, like maybe I'm not McVay. Let's just run the ball and get out of here and play conservative. So, Chris, I'll turn it to you for a second to see if you've got something fun too. But yeah, I've got to hop real quick.
And I've learned this over the years as being a young offensive guy as well as being kind of an old guy. You showed me a young offensive coordinator, or maybe showed me a first-time JV coach calling plays for the first time, and I'll show you somebody that's going to tell me everything he knows as a coach in about the first 5 or 6 plays he calls. Because he's going to just unload the gun right there, and he's going to show it all to you. And that's just from inexperience. You just don't know what you don't know. I've done some boneheaded stuff calling plays before, going to the wrong side, naked boots against the field or something like that. I've done some things that I should never have done before, but I was never in that position to have to call plays. I was working with a Russell Stone who knows it all, and here I am calling JV plays for the most part with a team that, while talented, only had about 17, 18, 19 guys at best at times. So, I didn't have to worry about those bad calls maybe as much as you do on Friday nights, Mike. But, I'm anxious to hear it from you because I think you're a much better coach than I could ever pretend to be, even if I was coaching a Madden or an NCAA team on the PlayStation. So I'm anxious to hear what you've got to say.
No, I mean, they're still happening. I did one Saturday night. We were trying to kind of get out of there with some of the backup kids in there. And, we were playing Oceanside, and they had some really good kids. They just didn't have a lot of depth, But they had a D lineman. He was about 6 foot, 6'1", 260. And, we were just kind of seeing where he was lining up and, decide if we wanted to go away from him for sure because we had some of the young kids in there. And, we called for the 29G, and again, it's because it's been a Butler since it opened up, and he happened to be on our left side. And as soon as we lined up, Coach Russell Stone and I, and all the guys on the half was like, "Oh, this is going to be a problem," and he about killed our kids. But no, and same thing, and I think real similar to what you were talking about, Grice. That first, that first JV game that I called down at Parkwood, and called for this motion. We're going to go motion here. We're going to change the strength and all that stuff. And the quarterback goes to send him in motion, and nobody moved. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? And I'm like, it's this way. You guys got to know it's rip, it's ripple motion. And they just, they didn't. And it's when you realize you just can't quite do all the things that you want to do. And, just because you want to, doesn't always work that way.
Oh, yeah.
Had a night over at Independence a couple of years ago. That was just about 2 years ago, where it was really late in the game and we had a lead. I thought, okay, well, let's just go ahead and we could run the clock out. And we took a knee on first down. I'm like, all right, we're in pretty good shape here, and run the play clock down. We took a knee on second down, and I think right after we took that second knee is when I realized we don't have enough downs to run this thing out, and we're gonna have to punt this thing out of here. We lined up to punt it, and it was one of the Law brothers, and they're big time rugby players. They play for Life College down in Atlanta now. And we were running out there, and said, look, dude, I screwed this thing up. I'm going to need you to bail me out on this. So if the opening's there, just go ahead and keep this one. And they did, and, he took the snap, and he ran for the first down. We were able to run it out. But, yeah, I almost ran us out of a game with that one.
No, that's awesome. That's one thing, as we do this, I'm spoiler alert, I'm going to ask every coach, because I think it's, you have so much going on within a game, and it's like some of those little things sometimes. It's as simple as leaving the car door open or something crazy like that. That people forget about. And those are the stories I always tell people. It's like, hey, we're worried about so many things that sometimes the easiest thing that you forget about, or that you would think you would have in a normal situation, you fail to get. But no, clearly you've made way more positive and great calls than those. But, we always learn from our mistakes the best. But kind of getting into that, your success clearly is well documented. State championship coach, being involved in some of the best teams in the state. You look at even this spring season, you having one of the best teams out there. I will not ask about that punt call, but, we understand that you're going to be right in the thick of it again. So, you've had so many players, go to college and the professional ranks. I saw the LeMay post about him running the ball in preseason. What would you say is your most memorable team or player? I'm going to put you on the spot. You got to choose. You got to give me something. What would you say is that most memorable for whatever reason? You have the state championship teams. You have teams that maybe were young, but who sticks out most in your mind when you hear that question?
Kenny Boulware. Bull. I've told this story a number of times. I told it a couple times recently. And Shaughnessy, if he's going to watch this, Coach, I'm sorry that I'm going to have to bring this part of this one game up. But, we played Providence. I want to say it was about 2006. And they had a running back, had a really big night on us. And, after that game, Kenny Boulware wore number 17 for us. And Kenny said, I'm going to get that dude. I'm going to get him next year, because the running back was a junior. And so we're playing Providence at home, Kenny's senior year. And he picks the ball off about midfield. And he's got open grass. He's got a wide open field in front of him. Well, Kenny intercepts the ball, and instead of running towards the end zone, he went and he found the running back. And Kenny went right at this running back with the ball in his hand and just launched himself into him and just absolutely crushed this poor kid and took him out of the game with that hit. And, as soon as he got up from the ground, he walked back. I told you guys I was going to get him. It was such a wild moment. But that was, one of my favorite moments. There's a 2007 JV game where we were playing Independence, and we probably had about 2,500 people at the game. And, we were undefeated. They were undefeated. Juwan Edwards, Deion Walker, Chris Frost, the guys who went on to become, really our 2009 state championship team, were that JV team. And they were going in for the win. No, they were already up. They were up, I think it was 14-7 with about 2.5 minutes left. And had the ball on our 7-yard line or so, and they snap it over the quarterback's head. And Zach Stallings, he's coming off the edge on a blitz. He pushes the quarterback by and recovers the fumble. And we go on a drive. And I think we convert 3 4th downs on the drive. We go down and score. And, he scores about, I think there's 11 seconds left, and it's 14-13. And Newsom comes over. He says, what are you going to do? I said, we're going for the win. And, at this point, Independence had won 70-some games in a row on JV on top of what they had already done on varsity. and we went for 2 and we got it. And, we had to hold our breath. We kicked off. They got the return out to about midfield, and, they had 1 play to go. Juwan Edwards comes over. He says, Coach, I'm going in on D-line. And when Juwan Edwards says, I'm going in on defensive line, you put Juwan Edwards in on defensive line. We got a great rush on the quarterback, and the kid threw it up, and Mark Bridges intercepted it. And, our crowd, they came running out onto the field, and that was the night where our kids realized they could beat, they could not just play with, but they could beat Independence. And, the next night at Memorial Stadium, we knocked them off and ended their, North Carolina winning streak. And, so that was a huge night for us as well. And then, I think, one of my other favorite nights was the night we beat Independence. I mean, anytime you beat Independence is a great night. But the night we beat them 61-6 down at Memorial, and just kind of just let it all out, just let all those years and all those beat downs, because that's what they were. When I first got there, they were beat downs, so they were great. But the night we beat them 61-6 down there was just was so much fun. And, I wish we were still down there scoring, to be honest with you.
Well, Brian, I got this question. It's kind of a little bit of a lightning round that I just want to kind of bring up a couple names. And I'm just going to give you a one name, and it could be a team name. It could be a person. I just want to get your response, maybe get a little sentence or a paragraph if you think about these persons kind of really quickly. Tommy Knotts.
The best. Just absolutely the best.
Riley Ferguson.
Man, the truth. The truth. Could put the ball anywhere he wanted it to with any speed he wanted it to.
Peter Columbi.
He's just always doing what he's supposed to be doing, where he's supposed to be doing it, when he's supposed to be doing it, and he's doing it to the best of his ability at all times.
What about Nate Charest?
Oh, gosh, the captain. Nate was the captain of the 2009 team, and, offensively, defensively, could do anything you wanted him to, and just the epitome of a high school football player.
And I know you just talked about this just a little bit ago, and I'm going to just kind of finish this round with this one team because I'm really thinking back to those 2000s runs when it was probably the biggest rivalry in the state, Independence. I mean, you think about them. I know it's your arch rival. Just tell us what you think when I bring up that name, the Independence Patriots.
I want to beat them. I want to beat them bad every time.
The Tommy Knotts, and I got to ask, and Langston's he was part of this madness. When he had the skit and Tommy fed into this and he called y'all the puppy dogs, how did that resonate with the team privately? Because we know that Coach Newsom, he kind of let it go, and Tommy was great. You got to know who Tommy is. But how did the team take it when he's on the paper, in the paper, on the internet, calling y'all the puppy dogs?
Oh, it was the best thing that could have happened. It was the absolute best thing. Newsom took that thing, and he may have downplayed it out here in the public, but that wasn't downplayed, on Matthews Min Hill Road. We absolutely, ran with that thing. And, once we knocked them off, because that was 2009, and we beat them at Independence 31-24. Chris Frost had the strip on the tackle that Alex Plowski recovered. But, yeah, that was that night. But Newsom absolutely played that thing up. And, no, that was great, man. We were glad he did it.
Speaking of 2009, I bring up the name PlayStation. What does that mean to you?
Anthony Short.
Anthony Short.
Yeah.
He was incredible.
We had a kid make a run Saturday night, ninth grader, DeQuadre Currents. And DeQuadre is going to be a great football player. But Mark Sanders and I were talking about it. He looked like Anthony Short on that run.
Wow. Well, Coach Hales, I just love having these memories with you, reminiscing with you. And I'm just glad to know that I was kind of right there along, covering these teams, seeing these guys. Grice, this is your segment. You're the superstar that really put this together. I want to give you the last little shot here. Any last final thoughts for the coach?
Yeah, I mean, this was something, and even I talked to Langston about, even for me, not being a coach that's from here, I'm from Greensboro, so some of the 704 history I'm learning, for me, it's great. I mean, I love hearing this and listening to great coaches talk about things that they've done. But even for coaches, younger than me, and again, this is going to be a question we ask everybody. Coach Hales, if a young coach came to you and said, hey, ask this question, what advice would you give them as they navigate through their coaching career?
Take your time. And I think that's one thing, a lot of mistakes people make, right? A lot of young coaches make right now is there's such a hurry to move on to get that higher job and to move up and to move up. my first year at Butler, on Sunday, we do our Sunday morning meetings. I sat in the corner and folded JV uniforms. That was my job, and every once in a while, I'd throw something out there, but I sat in the corner my first year at Butler, folded JV uniforms. On Friday nights, I stood up there in the press box, and I didn't have much to say, and then, after I was there a couple of years, I think this is great advice too. Coach Shaughnessy gave me this, was that, you're always going to have an opportunity to take a bad job. Bad jobs are always going to be out there. And, just because it's there, just because it may be offered to you, doesn't mean you have to take it. So take your time, be patient, find the right fit. And then, I think the other thing that's critical is coach the other side of the ball. One of the most important things that I ever did for my career, and I was always an offensive guy. I played offensive line in college, and those 2 years that I coached at college was on the offensive side, and Providence Day I was an O-line guy. When I got to Butler, I did 2 years with the running backs, but then I went and I coached D-line for 2 years for Shaughnessy. And that was just, it was huge. It was huge for my development, and not just being able to see the defense, but to understand what a great defensive coordinator thinks and what he looks for. But I strongly encourage a young coach to spend some time on the other side of the ball.
Well, Brian, I was going to let that be the last question, and I'm sorry to kind of steal your thunder a little bit, Grice, but being the old guy, I'm going to pull a little rank. And I just wanted to ask one more question that I thought about, while you was giving that answer. I mean, such knowledge you're throwing out there. I mean, just straight up fire. If you're a young coach, you need to listen to Coach Hales. You and I, we've both been doing this a long time. I'm not going to be around here forever covering sports. Your ups and downs, everything you've had at Butler. I mean, one of these days, Coach Hales is going to move on and retire and go sell helmets or something. I don't know what your next stage after this is. But whenever that last day of coaching, whenever you decide to hang up that whistle and go on and hang out watching practices like I do, what do you want people to think of you when they say Brian Hales and what he's meant, not just necessarily on the gridiron to the players, the people you've taught in the classroom, but just what do you want your people to think about when your day's coaching here is done?
That they had a good time being around me. That they didn't feel like they were doing anything they didn't want to do. That I had their best interest at heart. That I'm always there for them. And that's one of the reasons I think that I'm still Butler and that I'm always going to want to be a Butler, because we have guys that still come back. Recently we've been selling some old jerseys, and to have those guys be able to come back and, just see the look on their face coming down the field house, like, man, such memories here. I just want people to be able to look back fondly and say, we had a great time. We were together, and, we did it the best we could when we were together, and we had a great time doing it.
Well, Brian, I appreciate you coming on. I couldn't have thought of anybody better than the mayor of CLS football to come on and spend this first opportunity to talk on Talking Preps Overtime. We love you. We appreciate everything you do for football and for the kids and just everything. And just thank you so much for spending some time with us here.
Oh, thanks, guys. This was fun. And Chris, because we've been at the clinics before. I could do this stuff all day, and the stories, it's endless. And the names, and, for every Kenny Bullware and Derek Thompson and, guys like that. We just do this all night. Yeah, it's just so much fun about this is just the relationships you build with people, and not just the guys who play for you, but, their families and their parents. And, you brought up Nate Charest. So, obviously Scott and Cindy and, the LeMay family and people like that. It's so cool, man. And that's why we do this stuff, just because we're relationship people.
Thank you so much. We've had a great time tonight.
Yeah, me too.